a lot longer than I am, and most of you are. Nate Hochman is a political writer, writes for National Review, The Dispatch, and others. And he is a college senior at Colorado College. How awesome is that? Nate, how do you pronounce AREO magazine?
I think it's a Rio, but I've never actually heard it read out loud, so your guess is as good as mine.
All right, fair enough. Well, you've been published there, and we have noted that. Your article that I wanted to talk to you about, published in the National Review, The Rise of the Latino Republican. First of all, put that into perspective. I mean, Trump's not going to win a majority of Latinos, but the bar is very low. So first of all, how many Latinos are we talking about? And secondly, why?
Well, you're right that Trump on a national level is almost definitely not going to win the majority of the Latino vote outright, but he's actually within spitting distance in some key swing states like Florida and maybe even Texas. And as you said, the bar is not very high. Mitt Romney in 2012 got really destroyed by Barack Obama with the Latino vote, but there is an assumption by folks in both parties, I think, that Latinos are just a Democratic constituency. And if you look at the statistics, and that's the point I was trying to make in my article, there's actually a lot of evidence that they've been moving into the Republican Party for a couple of decades now. George Bush in 2004 won between 40 and 45% of the Latino vote nationally. So Trump is doing really well, and by a lot of polls, he has improved his standing significantly with Latinos since 2016. And that could be what puts him over the top in some key swing states like Florida.
Why do you think that is? Because I will tell you, Texas Latinos tend to be very different than Florida Latinos because you have a heritage of Mexico and Central America, which is quite different than the Cuban heritage. But I see the values of Latinos and say these are, first of all, it's very family, it's very faith, it's a high number of veterans and law enforcement. It's a very law-abiding community. A lot of immigrants, which are business owners who are aspirational. They're very focused on education and their children. All the values of opportunity that reflect the American dream. We should be winning these voters.
Absolutely. Right. Well, and on top of everything that you just mentioned, they're patriots. I mean, if you look at polling, immigrants in general, but particularly Latino immigrants, are more patriotic consistently than native-born Americans. By polling, they're more likely to say that America is an exceptional country, that America is the best country in the world, that the American dream exists. And that's because, if a lot of the folks, especially on the left, that you hear, denigrating America in our contemporary politics were born here, and they don't know what it's like anywhere else. So they don't really have any perspective. And if you're coming from a really poor, a war-torn country, a country without law and order, all of these things that we take for granted here, when you come to America, you have a lot of perspective on just how fantastic and exceptional this country really is. So, they're aspirational, they're deeply Christian, and they're patriots. And that's all, those are all characteristics that align with conservative values and Republican Party values. So it's not surprising at all that they're moving into the Republican Party. If anything, it's surprising that they weren't moving in earlier, and that they're not moving in larger numbers. This really is a constituency that the Republican Party should be doing outreach to. They have been doing outreach to them, but they need to keep doing that because they're poised to be one of the biggest voting blocs in America nationally in the next 10 years or so. And Republicans need to continue to make aggressive inroads with those communities because, as you said, they really do have conservative values. They're hardworking, they're entrepreneurial, they love this country, they have high rates of service in the military, they're deeply religious. These are people who are natural Republican Party constituents.
I love that you say Republicans should see the Latino community as an ally, not a threat. I agree. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring more people into the fold, to share and spread the message of opportunity, because people who become successful want other people to become successful. I want to read from your piece because we're at a point now where everyone is comparing 2020 to 2016 and saying, we know that Trump won in 16. What's different? What's the same? I'm going to read directly.
Right.
If new polling is to be believed, for example, President Trump appears to be rapidly gaining ground on Joe Biden in Miami-Dade, the 2.7 million person county that comprises the most populous voting district in the state of Florida. Biden is still decisively ahead of the president, but his most recent numbers mark a significant deterioration from the Democrat performance in the area 4 years ago. In 2016, the Trump campaign lost Miami-Dade to Hillary Clinton by a full 30 points. Now that gap has closed to about 17. What's most notable is that Trump is now leading Biden by a point or so with the area's Hispanic voters, who make up 70% of Miami-Dade's total population. That's a pretty dramatic change in a 4-year period for the same candidate. It's almost as if his deeds have won them over.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is certainly a part of it. And I think, you noted earlier that, Latino voters in Texas aren't necessarily the same as Latino voters in Florida. When we're talking about Latino, we're talking about folks from South America. There are a lot of different cultures and constituencies within South America. It's an entire continent. So one thing particularly in Florida is you have a lot of Cubans, and you have a lot of Venezuelans. And these are people for whom the trauma and the destruction of socialism is, really ingrained. It's branded in their memory. These are people who, by and large, escaped socialist dictatorships in countries like Venezuela and Cuba. So certainly there are real reasons to think that this White House's various policies have won.